In this video, I'm going to show you how to place the crankshaft position sensor on this Chevy Silverado 2500 with a 6.0 liter engine. This job will require a relearn of the crankshaft position sensor. Let's disconnect the battery, and I'm just going to disconnect the negative terminal on this one. My truck has two batteries. I'm going to show you how to disconnect both. If you just have one, it'll just be this one right here. There's the passenger side firewall right behind your coolant overflow tank. So let's grab a 10mm socket and loosen up this mounting nut that holds down the negative battery terminal. Once it's loose enough, you can just grab it, pull it aside, and make sure that you put it somewhere where it cannot bounce back onto the terminal. I'm going to tuck it right behind there like that. The other one is right behind the driver's side headlight. Same thing applies here. Grab a 10mm, loosen up the mounting nut. It's the same style terminal. Once you loosen it up enough, you should be able to wiggle it right off that battery and just put it down here. Obviously, there's no way it's going to come up by itself. At this point, you have all the power disconnected to the vehicle, so we can continue with our job. Now with our battery disconnected, you can reach in through the passenger side wheel well. You do not have to remove the wheel for this, and you can reach in with a pick of some sort. I have this long hook, and I'm going to disconnect this starter trigger cable, pull back on the tab, and pry the connector out. You can also reach in from underneath. Once it's unhooked, you should be able to pull it back and disconnect it from the starter. There we go. Set that aside. Now let's use a 13mm socket and remove this mounting nut here for the main power cable to the starter. There we go. Shouldn't be very tight. Back that off all the way, and then we can remove the wire. There it is. Pull this wire off. Set it aside. Two 13mm bolts hold this starter on. There's one. And two. Now you can grab the starter, slide it back out of the transmission bell housing, and then down. And there it is. Now with the starter off, you can see that the crankshaft position sensor is located right here. It's covered with this little protective boot. Peel that back, pry up on the connector. You should be able to push it backwards like that. If you can't, it's probably stuck, so you might need a second hand in there to help pull as you pry up on the tab. There we go. Next, there's a 10mm bolt that we have to remove that locks the sensor down onto the engine block. Once it's broken free, it should come out fairly easily. There it is. Now take the sensor, wiggle it until it pops free. There's an O-ring. That's what's going to make it stuck on there. And if it doesn't slide right out immediately, you can take a little pry bar screwdriver, stick it right there, and help pop it out. There we go. Just gently guide it out, wiggle it. There it is. I see a lot of rust buildup, so I'm going to plug up the hole with that same rag, and right around the edge, I'm going to take a tiny pocket screwdriver and just clean this up a little, just so I know that the sensor can sit perfectly flat on this. Down along the bottom here, scrape that off as well. Make sure nothing goes in the engine. Wipe it off one more time. Hopefully your engine block is not as corroded. Take the new sensor, lubricate that O-ring with some engine oil, and slowly drive it in. Give it a couple turns and twists to make sure that it's gonna seat inside that hole. There we go, that falls in. Now take your bolt, start it in, thread it on by hand as far as you can get it, hopefully all the way. snug it up with a wrench or a ratchet. The torque for this is 18 foot-pounds. If you're unable to torque it, give it about 1/8 of a turn after it bottoms out. Oh, that's it right there. Let's plug it in. When you reconnect the electrical connector, make sure it clicks and locks on this locking tab here. Oops. There we go. And if yours still had this cover, put it back on so it can be protected. Now grab your starter, slide it in the exact same way it came out. Bring it a little bit further so you can clear the transmission, and then slide it into the bell housing here. When you do this, make sure you don't pinch any wires or anything. There we go. Have your bolts ready, at least one of them, so that you can thread it on. That way this won't fall off as soon as it's lined up. Both bolts are exactly the same, so there's no reason to keep them separate or install one in any specific mounting hole. Okay, one is started. Let's start in the second. Snug up the bolts. Let's torque them. The torque on both of these bolts is 37 foot-pounds. Doesn't matter which one you start with. There's one. And two. Now let's reconnect the main power wire. If it's dirty, corroded, clean it up. Mine is good, so I'm going to resecure it just like so. And then let's put the mounting nut back on. Tighten it up. When you tighten this, you want to make sure that you just snug it and then stop. Otherwise, you will break that stud internally, and then you'll need a new starter. The torque on this is only 80 inch-pounds. It's very low. I can't get a torque wrench in here, so I can't torque it. I'm just going to make it snug, but if you can fit a torque wrench in there, go ahead and torque it. And last thing is going to be to plug in the trigger wire here. My connector, unfortunately, or the locking tab for the connector broke, but yours should click on and over. Let's reconnect the batteries now. It does not matter which one you start with if you have two batteries. I'm just going to start with this one. Place the negative terminal over the negative post of the battery, and with your 10mm socket, carefully snug up this mounting nut on the terminal. Hold it from spinning if necessary. Once you get it snug enough, it should stop spinning. Give it a quick squeeze. Give it about 1/8 of a turn after it bottoms out. If you cannot move this terminal back and forth, you're good to go. Let's move on to the other one. Grab that terminal, place it over the battery, and just like the other one, tighten up that 10mm nut. Once it bottoms out, give it about 1/8 of a turn at most. Definitely not more than that. It's tight, it doesn't move, so job is done. Now that the job is done, make sure you grab a scan tool that is able to reprogram these crankshaft position sensors, plug it in, and it will run you through all the steps that you need to take to program this sensor correctly so that the vehicle can run right and not have a check engine light.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.